we go. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you this glorious Saturday morning. My special guest this morning, Andrew Collins. He is, I've known him for a long, long time. He's an author, an explorer. He's born in 1957 in Bedford, England. He's a science and history writer. He's the author of over a dozen books that challenge the way we perceive the past, and we definitely need those challenges. Lots and lots of books. The Black Alchemist, The Seventh Sword, from Ashes of Angels. I really like that book. I have in my hands here the Cygnus Key, which is also a very good book. I haven't read the entire thing, but I've read bunches of it. Egypt fascinates me. And he is my guest this morning, so welcome, Andrew. How are you?
Brooks, hi. Yes, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, just been trying to do some cooking for later, but now let's get on to the real subject matter of the day, which is understanding the mysteries of the universe.
That's exactly right. Well, we only have an hour, maybe a little less. We're both going to be at the Beyond the Matrix conference in Sedona, Arizona on Easter weekend. So If you're anywhere near there, you want to see us both in the same place at the same time, that could be life-changing, couldn't it?
Indeed.
It's going to be marvelous. Suzanne Ross puts on an awesome event, and she has a bunch of great friends. Brad Olson's going to be there, Laura Eisenhower. It's just going to be crazy, crazy powerful. All right, let's get into it. You know what? Let's first talk about From Ashes of Angels, because one of the things that we realize as we travel the world is we see evidence of ancient civilizations, and all of these ancient civilizations, be they in Mexico or Egypt or Syria, ancient Babylonia, we see depictions of these beings with wings and purses in their hands and pine cones, and we've been fascinated with them, but we don't really know who they are. Generally speaking, but you've studied it for a long time. So why don't you bring us up to speed?
Well, I think that what we're seeing here is shamans, or essentially humans, who are taking the form of supernatural beings, beings which either they perceive whilst they're in an altered state of consciousness, or beings which they perceive in visions and dreams. Of course, the bigger question is, who these beings are. Are they a fiction of our imagination? Are they tangible? Are they physical? Are they flesh and blood? And where do they come from if they do exist? Obviously, is it some kind of parallel realm, parallel existence? Is it another star system, or is it from some kind of multi-dimensional space? And beyond that, is this what they really look like, or is this simply a mask that we create and place upon supernatural intelligences that we can handle, that we can accept? I think that within all of this are the answers to everything. And, I think this should be the debate of what we're talking about today, and what impact any of this has, not only on human consciousness, but on civilization as a whole. Because I think these are fundamental questions. It's so easy just to accept that, let's say, UFOs are alien nuts and bolts spacecraft, which if you go up and tap, they sound, hollow, when I think that the picture is actually far more complex and most likely far more interesting than simply the idea that you're dealing with craft that are somehow able to cross vistas of space, in a means which we can only perceive of from a fantasy or science fiction point of view. I think that ever since the phenomena came back into our world, or into our consciousness in 1947, we've had certain preconceptions about what's going on. We've seen it in terms of some kind of threat or intrusion
Sure.
from from another planet, whether it be the planet Mars, the planet Venus, the planet Saturn, or Zeta Reticuli as we start to look further afield, or some other star system, the Pleiades or Orion or Draco. And of course, today we are looking in terms of things like reptilians, and really evil creatures that want to control the human race. Now, is this the way we should be going? I think that, we have to start looking at this differently. And there have been various authors along the way who have been signposts on this road of discovery. People like Jacques Vallée, John Keel, Michael Persinger, Jenny Randalls in the UK, and all of these people have seen things from a different perspective. And I like to think that I'm traveling the road which they first initiated, and that some of my books are really looking at where we are going, not just at the past. Yes, I want to challenge the way we perceive the past, but I also want to challenge the way we perceive the future as well, because I think that we need to educate the world beyond simply the idea that UFOs are representative of alien races.
Sure. You use the verb form are, and we've always thought about these beings as in the past tense. They were here, they were interacting with these ancient civilizations. We read about it in Genesis where angels had relations with earth women, giving birth to Nephilim and giants, and then those got wiped out. And then the flood came, and then after the flood in the Bible, we see the mention of the Nephilim again, the fallen angels, the watchers. And one has to ask the question, are they still here? Are they still interacting with mankind, maybe pulling the strings on these crazy conspiratorial wars that we're seeing globally right now?
Well, I mean, firstly, the Nephilim are flesh and blood beings. In my opinion, they are human, or were human if we see it in the past tense. And they are the product of the Watchers, certainly according to the Book of Enoch and other similar Enochian literature. And in my opinion, the Watchers themselves are, for the most part, flesh and blood human beings that existed in the past. And what we are doing is perceiving their existence through the memories, through the folk lore and legends of peoples that existed in Southwest Asia, most of them Semitic, from the age of Göbekli Tepe, which is about 11,000 years ago, down to the foundation of the Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian civilizations, which we know had a massive impact on the compilation of the Bible, for instance, and other, sort of so-called pseudepigrapha literature like the Book of Enoch. Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful here. The Nephilim are not spacemen, in my opinion. The whole Zecharia Sitchin idea that Nephilim and, the Anunnaki are space beings that come from another planet, to me, is false. That's my opinion. We are dealing here with a modern day nuts and bolts perspective of ancient literature. And, whether Zecharia Sitchin was accurate in his translations of Sumerian and Hebrew text, or whether he just made it up as he went along, as some people have claimed, it doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that people are believing this in the thousands, if not the hundreds of thousands or even millions today. And for me, we need to correct this. And I know that probably an event in Sedona is not exactly the place to do that.
It could be. Everybody should come.
I feel strongly that, that I'm using, your show now to actually get these points across. Because, people need to understand that there's a bigger picture here, one which I think involves such subjects as multidimensionality, quantum entanglement, and the idea of what I'd call nonlinear causality. In other words, that the physical path of time that we perceive is only of our making, and that outside of this, everything is nebulous. Everything in the past is nebulous. Everything in the future is nebulous, and that in many ways we are contributing not only to our future but also to our past as well. That all of them are a part of a bigger whole, one that is constantly mutating and changing. So we have to be careful with the way that we think. If you want reptilians to come to Earth to take it over, then that's exactly what will happen one day.
Yeah, because we will manifest it.
What we wish.
We'll manifest it. And the more people that think about that put their attention, their human battery of consciousness on it, the more real it becomes. Exactly. We look at the struggles that are going on globally right now, and we don't really have a grand marketing plan out there saying, hi, we're the global syndicate. But we sense that there is a global syndicate, that there's a global mind behind the curtain that seems to be directing these very big events. And it is either very powerful individuals like a Jesus or a Buddha or even a Donald Trump that makes things shift on their axis, or it is the group consciousness of humans themselves. And it's programs like this that excite that consciousness, and books that you write that give us the raw materials to make those shifts in our consciousness. So we're talking about ancient powers, ancient individuals, ancient forces that were here on the earth long ago. And I assume that the population of the earth wasn't what it is today, 7+ billion people. I assume that the average ordinary citizen didn't have an opportunity to jump in an airplane and fly around the world the way we do today. I assume that we did not have instant communication like we do right now this morning here on a Saturday morning, where you're in the UK, I'm in the US, and there are people all over the world listening right now and will listen all day long. But we do now. We have this ability now. So if those ancient forces were present and trying to influence dusty, crusty, rub two sticks together to make fire mankind, why would they not be here now, influencing us now?
I mean, you're talking about intelligences that are outside of normal space-time. They've always been here, and always will. I'm looking at this very moment, not just at the origins of shamanism 400,000 years ago, which took place in Israel, but I'm looking back to the earliest moments of sentience and technology in our distant ancestors. The earliest moment somebody thought about fire and realized that they could replicate what nature did and create fire on a regular basis. Now, we've all seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. We've all seen how at the beginning a black monolith appears amongst, literally ape men, and allows them to start thinking differently, to start realizing that if they pick up a bone, they can use it as a weapon and win back the watering hole that's just been stolen by their rivals, their neighboring tribe. And, we have to look at that monolith and say, what is that monolith? Yes, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of otherworldly, alien, or even multidimensional intelligence. But what is it in real terms? And in real terms, it's the interaction with some kind of higher consciousness, with that of developing human consciousness. And this is something that probably took place as much as certainly 1.76 million years ago, which is when the oldest hand axe was created. But probably it occurred around 2 to 3 million years ago. That is when the moment of the black monolith appearing actually took place. And if we want to look for a location for it, it's somewhere on the Great Rift of Africa. I'm not saying that's the only place, but it's certainly the most obvious as far as anthropology is concerned, because, here we have the very first evidence of humankind developing technology, developing fire, developing stone tools. And, a skeptic might say, well, yes, but, these people were around for perhaps 1 million years each, each of these different members of the different genus,
sure,
like Australopithecus or Paranthropus, which were those that came before the Homo or human genus. And they were the ones that developed fire. They were the ones that developed stone tools, bone tools for the first time. So something was going on there. Now, was it simply, a case of random evolution from what Darwin talks about, or is there something more complicated going on? Is it more something to do with the way that human consciousness suddenly becomes aware that it has intuition, and that the intuition then goes on to create technology? And if so, what is that intuition? Is it something that's simply within us, or is it coming from some kind of external source, a source which is a universal consciousness? And if it is a universal consciousness, is it something that is connected solely to the Earth, or is it something that's connected with the universe as a whole? I think it's the latter.
Sure.
And if it is the latter, then what that means is that we're connected into a matrix, which quite literally involves every form of intelligence in the universe, past, present, and future. And that includes aliens that exist on other planets, on other stars, and most likely they don't even look like us. The most important thing about them, though, is that they have consciousness.
Sure.
This is the collective and the commonality with everything that is going on. It's consciousness. The nearest star is what, 4 light years away?
Yeah.
So if we use some form of communication, let's say radio telescopes, to beam out a message, it's going to take 4 years for that message to be received if it goes at the speed of light. Now, if you want instantaneous return of that message, if you're saying hello and somebody else responds back, that's the same amount of time in return. So that means 8 years just for communication to begin. That's ridiculous. There is no way that the forces that created this universe, whether they are a natural process or an artificial process, would have allowed that. Very clearly, there's an instant form of communication, and that, as we know, is quantum entanglement.
Sure.
That allows consciousness to consciousness communication. And I believe that this is possible, and that it has been going on since those 8 men went, and that in many ways, the black monolith is that consciousness. Yeah. That is that collective consciousness in the universe as a whole. And what that does is it links us with everything. It links us with every alien race. It links us with multidimensionality. It links us with intelligences that exist on a multi-dimensional parallel realm, basically.
Yeah,
and I know these are big statements, and
and that's it's powerful stuff.
This is where we're going.
It's powerful stuff, but when we're talking about quantum entanglement, we're talking about very, very precise frequency matches in order for energy to transfer from one ion to the other, or we're talking about being able to flip the spin on particles on one ion and having an entangled particle have its particle flip spin at the same time across space and time, which we have demonstrated, but under very controlled circumstances. If we think of that, maybe elements created by the same supernova event are already entangled, which means particles that were used to make our physical body were also used to make physical bodies on other star systems. And so as our consciousness affects the matter that makes up our body, if those beings in that other world are in tune with what our thoughts are, they're receiving them. And likewise, the other way around. Where do you think these simultaneous inspirations come from all over this planet? We have years and years and years go by without an invention, and all of a sudden it appears, but it doesn't appear in just one place. It appears all over the place. Almost every nation has a simultaneous aspect of the same kind of invention. I don't care what it is, if it's a computer program or a mechanical device or a medical device, it seems to, or a weapon, it seems to proliferate just out of thought. So when we're talking about from the ashes of angels, we're talking about ancient intelligence, which I guess we could use that in a relative term if we're thinking about time as not existing or the singularity still existing. Either way, they're not ancient at all, but they're other aspects of us. And we're these edifices that have been left behind on this planet that have survived, now it appears, millions of years of cataclysms, or at least tens of thousands of years of cataclysms, are there to remind us of who we are. And when studious people like Andrew write great books that pinpoint these correlations, it awakens things in us and we remember key things about our ancient self. Is that the way you feel?
Absolutely. I think you've summed it up perfectly. Absolutely. So when we look in terms of the Watchers or the Nephilim, in many ways, they're reflections of us. And by virtue of that, they can teach us what knowledge we've lost, because knowledge does get lost. I mean, we are only beginning to realize all of these things because of science, obviously, and because of, mass communication, ideas that can be communicated instantaneously on social media or through blogs or vlogs or anything else. And so we are learning faster now than what we have ever done before.
Sure.
But what we also must realize is that the ancients had a lot of this knowledge intuitively, and that a lot of what we call the evolution of technology and the evolution of consciousness is something that they were doing naturally in a way which we have lost because of religion and the dogma. And because of politics and because of control and all these things have got to be stripped away and got rid of.
Yeah.
Not to be easy, of course.
I don't think we're going to get rid of politics this year anyway. Listen, I'm holding up in my hands because the audience can see it, but you can't because we're just doing audio only. But I'm holding up a copy of the Cygnus Key. I just want the audience to see this. This is a really significant book. And if you've ever been to the pyramids or ever read any works by authors like Robert Balval or others, a great engineer, a good French engineer, and I've had many conversations with him, you realize that these pyramids at Giza were not placed haphazardly, that they did just find a flat place in the sand and say, okay, let's put one here, and one there. What we realize, if you read this book, The Cygnus Key, is there's a specific alignment and arrangement of these three structures, and they have survived way longer than what people think. When we first became aware of the pyramids, at least in my lifetime, Andrew's a couple years younger than I am, but we thought the Egyptians built them. Hell, the Egyptians thought they built them, but they were there a long time before. At least the Sphinx was there a long time before the Egyptians ever walked into the Nile River Valley. And it was significant because it taught that community something that they tried to carry on through subsequent dynasties. But we kind of always thought that they were aligned with Orion's belt. Yeah, look, there's 3 stars. Here's 3 pyramids. Yeah, it's Orion's belt. What did you discover that made the difference, that really was so precise it was undeniable?
Well, The Orion Mystery by Robert Bauval is one of the books that inspired me to write From the Ashes of Angels and subsequent books. The reason for this is that prior to, Robert writing that book, I thought that only Egyptologists with academic qualifications could write books on that subject. And, his background is an engineer, and yet he realised and sussed certain important things and created a best-selling book out of it that was also very scholarly written and very well received by the scholarly community, even if they wouldn't openly admit it. But the thing is that, what it also opened up is the fact that there are many more mysteries associated with the pyramids than simply a connection with Orion. And what I discovered working with my own engineer friend, Rodney Hale, is that the 3 pyramids also align perfectly through their geographical positions with the 3 wing stars of the constellation of Cygnus, the celestial bird or swan, and that this particular constellation, that's also known as the Northern Cross, is seen by many indigenous cultures around the world, and has been for many thousands of years, as a point of access into the sky world or afterlife. It's there in Mayan tradition, it's there in ancient India, it's there amongst the mound building cultures of America, it's there amongst the megalithic peoples of Britain, and it's there in other parts of the Eurasian continent. Now, it's even there in South America amongst the Incas. So, very clearly, the fact that it also can be found in Egypt should not surprise us. And this is something which I realized, as far back as about 2005. But I also realized that by publishing it, it would bring me into conflict with one of the people that had been my own, mentors, and that was obviously Robert Bauval. And indeed, when my first book on the subject, the Cygnus Mystery, was published in 2006, there was a lot of exchange between Robert and I online, which ran to something like 70 pages on whether Orion or Cygnus was most important at Giza. And at the time we both stood our ground. It was like 2 rival football teams, Liverpool and, Manchester United, with the supporters of one and the supporters of the other, going at it on each side. And I realized many years later that it actually doesn't matter. Robert and I, met up just a couple of years ago at a Contact in the Desert, and we just joked. We just said, look, the forces that will be are not going to give just one constellation as the be-all or end-all of a particular, civilization's pinnacle monuments. They're going to do more than that. And in this case, it's Orion and Cygnus. And what is so interesting, of course, is that the arm of the Milky Way that we're on, of this particular galaxy, is known as the Orion-Cygnus arm. So, it's this strange dichotomy, this strange counterbalance that something, the forces that be, the universe as a whole builds into the system. It doesn't just give us one theory, it gives us 2. And those 2 theories will have to, slog it out for some kind of balance and harmony. And I think this is something that's been there probably all the way along and can be adequately defined by the symbol of infinity, the figure of 8. That's exactly what it is. It's counterbalance. Everything has to be balanced, but of course, that only comes because of chaos and order constantly struggling, creation and entropy. And I think that this is something which, we have to accept And so, Robert and I are now exactly parallel with the way that we perceive, let's say, the manufacture of the Great Pyramid, which is clearly the result not just of the ancient Egyptians, and I do happen to believe, as he does, in the conventional dating of the building of the pyramid structures. I mean, it's something I've studied for many years. I was there for nearly 3 weeks recently. I've now visited virtually all of the major pyramids, and to see their evolution, I'm quite happy that the Giza pyramids are part of that evolutionary morphology, or process of evolution. But that we now believe that the people that created the Great Pyramid, the architects, designers, were being inspired by higher forces.
Yes.
Now, whether they were spacemen, whether they were multidimensional intelligences, we can't say. But that a lot of what was built into the Great Pyramid by accident or design is something that we're now beginning to connect with for the first time. Whether this be geometry, mathematics, alignments to the stars. And in many ways, we can still connect with the mind of the architects. We can still influence that architect to get up one morning and say, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to align these 3 pyramids to the stars of Orion, or the stars of Cygnus. And, and I think that is possible. We can still influence the past today. We can certainly influence that which is not already written in stone. We can have an impact on the past. And this is something that we refer to as nonlinear causality. Nonlinear causality is something that means that the past, present, and the future are still being written at this time, and that the future in some linear possibility already exists. Not that we have to tread that path, but it exists in some linear possibility, and that all of these are interlinked, and all of these in many ways revolve around the idea of entanglement, that consciousness is entangled outside of normal space-time.
Well, I think that's true. And I think that the great forces that are operating on the planet right now, and we can see them around us, I think they understand that these are true principles as well. And there are mathematical relationships that make this have more power. You don't have to do this by brute force. You could do this by resonance. And the way the universe has set up, or is set up to do it, is through a ratio, which we call the golden mean, or the golden ratio. It's a ratio of increase that governs the way subatomic particles become atomic particles, the way things line up on the periodic chart, the way planets line up around stars, the way light propagates through the universe, and the way music operates and builds upon itself. And it seems not without coincidence, but certainly as a statement of intelligence, that the arrangement of the pyramids reiterated that idea that music and the golden ratio, this 1.618 to 1, or phi, was integral to not only the survival of the human race, but maybe even the creation of humanity itself.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't answer all those questions in one go, but what I can say is that this whole relationship with the golden section, with musical intervals, and with the spheres of the music of the spheres, is something that I cover in great detail in association with the Great Pyramid in the Cygnus Key, which came out in 2018, and basically showed that a lot of these ideas, although inspired by the geniuses that created those Fourth Dynasty pyramids, was something that was part of a lineage that went back many tens of thousands of years to the people that we now refer to as the Denisovans.
Yes.
These are a lost human lineage that has been confirmed by the discovery of bones fragments of skulls and various other things, human teeth, from a place called the Denisova Cave in Siberia, and has shown to be a type of human who we had no previous knowledge of prior to 2010.
How far back does that human go?
Well, they probably go back to around 500,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They're very closely related to the Neanderthals, but they also were very distinct, not just in their own genome, but in their technology, their looks, their appearances, and what they achieved through till their time of disappearance around 45,000 years ago, which basically coincides with when we almost certainly turned up. I mean, when I say we, I mean the ancestors of Homo sapiens turned up in the area of Siberia. Now, what we do know is that a number of modern human populations have Denisovan DNA, anything up to 5 to 6%. And so what this tells us is that we interbred with these Denisovans before they disappeared, and that we are carrying on their legacy. You are carrying their DNA, but also the legacy. Their technology is something that we have inherited. And we know that, for instance, that the Denisovans were the first to play musical instruments, the first to create tailored clothing using bone needles, the first to create sophisticated stone tools, which are adopted by our own ancestors and continue to be used through to the Bronze Age. They were the first possibly to ride horses. They were the first to understand the movements and the cycles of the sun and the moon, and many other things like this. I mean, they passed this legacy on to us, and we carried it forward, and it made the rudiments of civilization itself. You know, they are the lost civilization, if you like, but their civilization is not a civilization of roads and towns and cities. Mm-hmm. It's what we call the shamanic civilization. It's a civilization of the mind. It's a civilization that existed within the mindscapes that they created and utilized to connect with otherworldly domains, otherworldly intelligences, and otherworldly knowledge and wisdom. And it was universal, and they were almost certainly the first to create sacred monuments at key sites, which I see as places of contact around the world. You know, they were going into these areas where mysterious lights and other strange phenomena took place, and they were, utilizing them. They were utilizing the caves, and they probably built stone structures as well. And we are only beginning to realize that, they were the first to do this, and that they passed on this technology onto our own ancestors, and they eventually created places like Göbekli Tepe in southeast Turkey, and through that, the different megalithic monuments throughout the Eurasian continent and beyond that into other parts of the world as a whole.
Why do you think with this ancient savant genetics that seems to still exist, or at least echo in our own human genome, our modern human genome, do you think that world forces are still struggling for, the reason they're struggling for control of the earth is because of these ancient forces? I mean, why can't we just, we have universal translation now. We have the ability to transfer intelligence and music and art and, of course, even religion among all of us instantaneously. Why are these forces still battling one another 500,000 years later?
Well, I suppose the answer to that is that it has to be. I mean, obviously, that these struggles are what allow us to evolve, and I think that this is what's going to happen in the future. I mean, people say to me, well, this is all very nice but where is it leading? Where are we going with any of this? Well, answer number one is the creation of the quantum computer, which is going to change everything. Not simply because the processing is going to be, I don't know, let's say 1,000 times faster than any computer that we've got at the moment, which means that it will almost become an intelligence in its own right. But secondly, that through overcrowding in this world and many other factors to do with climate, we will need to get off this planet. And that the different struggles between nations, between different factions, is going to lead us to develop forms of getting off this planet. It will allow us to create the space technology available for us to make the next move as a population, as a race in its own right. And that will be to step off this planet and go not just to other planets in this solar system, but to other star systems. That is what we are inevitably going to do. But
or have already done.
Would we do it if we were all just sitting down and peace-loving people and getting on with each other? Maybe. But I think that because there is this rivalry and these struggles, you look at the Second World War as a terrible thing that it was. It allowed us to develop so much so quickly. Everything from radar, to an understanding of nuclear physics. And many things beyond that, of course, because of the fact that we were at war and because you had to invent things very quickly and develop research and development had to work so fast in order to win the war. And eventually this is what's going to become the point of necessity, the point where everything comes together. All the different factors will come together eventually until we find a way of getting off this planet. That's the inevitability. And once we're off this planet, then in many ways we are halfway to becoming galactic in nature.
So perhaps the struggles and conflicts that we have with one another over the centuries are a training ground for the struggles that we're going to have with Earth itself, or maybe our own solar system. We'll have to come up to speed, and we'll have to have practice at coming up to speed, or we perish.
Yeah. And I think that, it all comes back to these two factors, the creation and entropy. What you create will eventually fall apart.
Sure.
But, then creation will come into force again. It's two constantly dualistic forces that are opposed to each other and have to be there in the whole motion of the universe from its start point to the end. And remember, if quantum entanglement allows for non-linear causality, then in some strange way, as soon as the universe was created, its end product was known as well. And, in other words, when it was created, it was inevitable what would happen at the end. Mm-hmm. And because everything's happening outside of normal space-time, anybody or any intelligence observing that would see what the end game would be in the universe. And now I'm hoping that that's a good thing. And if it is a good thing, then just possibly the intelligences that observe that keep the timeline. They make sure that this eventuality takes place. And I believe that those intelligences exist. I think that they're multidimensional in nature. I've written about them in various articles. We call them Morphians because of their transformative nature and the fact that when they appear to us, they can appear to us in whatever way they wish. They can put on whatever mask that they want for us to accept their reality. And I think that they exist out there. I think that there are keepers of the timeline, if you like. And that timeline begins at the foundation of the universe, and that they prevail all the way through to the ultimate collapse of the universe. Now, I mean, obviously, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a big bang and a final collapse. I mean, just maybe the universe is different to that. Maybe it is something that's constant. But I think that whatever the case, that I think these ideas are real, and that we should at least understand the concept, and perhaps try and look at things like the UFO phenomena, aliens, strange phenomena, portal sites around the world, and see them as all part of a bigger picture. Synchronicities, quantum entanglement, human consciousness, they are all interrelated. And of course,
well, I would much rather be thinking about that stuff than Bernie Sanders right now. Absolutely. And maybe the ancients weren't so stupid making all this big stuff out of stone, because
they definitely weren't. I mean,
yeah,
they know exactly what they were doing, and what they were doing is that they were building monuments that could enhance their connection with these universal intelligences at places which we know today as portals, that themselves have the exact geology to allow effects on the brain that open up areas of consciousness that can link in with these other intelligences, the other, as we call it sometimes. And that this is something that was realized at a very early day. I think that initially it was something that was more sort of fun than anything else. If you're going back, let's say 2 million years ago, I don't think that when the people went inside the caves and they felt different in there, they felt some kind of euphoria, they might see pretty lights and visions and things like that. I don't think they understood really what they were doing. But I think that very gradually they began to realize that they thought differently at such places and would return there to gain inspiration, to gain knowledge, intuition, and wisdom. And this is the foundation. And then eventually they realized that they could create monuments that would do exactly the same function. We call them megalithic monuments today. And people like Paul Devereaux, Jenny Randalls, Michael Persinger, John Keel, Jacques Vallée, all the rest of it, all had a small part of the story a long time ago, and we're now, and only now, beginning to pull it all together. And perhaps this brings us on to, the crux of the matter here is that one of those portal sites is Sedona,
right?
Somewhere that has got the correct geology, somewhere that produces the mysterious lights and the strange phenomena and the effects on human consciousness that has made it famous. It's famous, red rock, that obviously very quartz bearing, but also with a lot of iron within that rock to give it its color, and it affects human consciousness. And of course we are putting on, Suzanne Ross is obviously putting on, and we're attending this great event, at the beginning of April. I think it's April the 10th to the 12th.
Right.
And here's the important thing for people. This is free. You can just come along to Sedona that weekend, and registration is free. So you can hear us talking about this type of subject for nothing.
That's right.
I mean, the adventures out to the different vortex site, yes, of course, they cost money. And the details of those are up on site, and I'm sure you'll give a link to the web page and the place of registration, Brooks. So people out there can come along and hear us talk about these very subjects, and to enter into the debate and to go out to the sites. I mean, I myself, for instance, am doing this Kachina ceremony meditation out at Thunder Mountain, to connect with the ancestors, to connect with the people that taught to us this knowledge. But beyond that, I will be going out to what is known as the Rendlesham Forest UFO Incident Binary Code site, which is this pyramid mountain with this enigmatic snake door at its base, which seems to be its point of entrance and exit, which was first mentioned in this very strange message that came to one of the airmen involved in Britain's greatest UFO case. It took place 40 years ago at a place called Rendlesham Forest in East Anglia, not far from where I'm talking to you now. And the airman who actually encountered this object, a guy by the name of Jim Peniston, had this download at the time that came in the form of a series of binary code information that, when translated, gave a series of coordinates around the world of places that are places of contact. Some of them are obvious, like the Great Pyramid or the Nazca Lines. Some of them are less obvious, like the Taishan Mountain in China, which is where I was last year, or the Naxos Gate of Apollo in the Aegean Sea of Greece. But one of those sites is Sedona, and not an obvious place either, like one of the obvious vortex sites, like Cathedral Rock or Airport Mesa or somewhere like this, but somewhere that's just to the south of Sedona, somewhere that had not even been on the map. But what's so interesting is that the Native American peoples of the regions saw this very area of Sedona as their Sipapu. Sipapu means place of emergence, the place where their first ancestors emerged into the physical world. And this is something that I've put together with my own research over the last couple of years, and I will be taking people out to that site for the second of my adventures, and I'd love you to join me there.
By the way, if you want to get tickets, it's free. I mean, it doesn't cost anything. You can go to sci-spy.tv, sci-spy.tv. You can see the link. I've got it over here, just off the screen here. You'll see the orange logo there, sci-spy.tv. The tickets are free. We'd just like to know who's coming. Please come. By the way, Andrew, what are you going to bring with you? You're going to bring some stuff for your table.
Yeah. In theory, I've still got to sort it out with my publishers, but yeah, is the answer.
Great. Well, it's going to be amazing. Hopefully the weather is good too. I've only been to Sedona one time, and we got the full range of weather. It rained a little bit, it snowed a little bit, and then it was sunny a little bit. But when we went up on Bell Rock, the weather was perfect, and it was a really neat experience. There is a wealth of talent in Sedona, not just because Suzanne Ross lives there, but there are other talented individuals, intellectuals and esoterics that live in Sedona, and they all come to these events. So I'm telling you, you get myself and Andrew and Brad Olson and Laura Eisenhower in one place. You don't know what's going to happen. We were at a conference together one time, and we decided to have karaoke. We took all the TV equipment that they were filming the thing with. We set it all up, and we sang until 3:00 in the morning. It was magical. It was just awesome. You just don't know what's going to happen. You got to come. If you're within 200 miles of Sedona, make the drive. It's the 10th through the 12th, or 10th and 11th. And you can get tickets for free. It doesn't cost anything to come to see us. sci-spy.tv. Check it out. Andrew, amazing stuff. I know you're fixing dinner over there in the UK. You're several hours ahead of us.
Oh, yeah. I have an evening of meditations tonight, which will be focusing on some of these great subjects that we've been talking about. Yes, I have to feed people, so that comes as part of the package.
Yes, it does. Part of the physical body. It has been such a pleasure to have you on. Great to hear your voice again, and I can't wait to see you next month.
Okay, and just out of interest, obviously, if people want to get in touch with me, andrewcollins.com is my website. andrewcollins.com. There are links through to the Sedona event in April. In case you want to look at that. Plus, obviously, there are various other things that I'm doing at the time, obviously, other conferences, including Contacting the Desert at the end of May. So if you can't make Sedona, I'll see you at some of these other events.
Yep, I'll be at Contact in the Desert on Saturday night. In fact, I'm debuting my new book, Asteroids and the Future of Energy, or Asteroid Mining and the Future of Energy. It's going to be in a really, really good presentation. Cutting edge stuff.
And I should also point out that my most recent book, written with Greg Little, the ancient mound culture expert, is Denisovan Origins. That came out late last year.
Nice.
So if you want to know who these Denisovans are, if you want to know how they link to the lost civilization, then get that book, Denisovan Origins. Just put Denisovan in the search engine with Amazon and it will straight come up. So have a look at that.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for accommodating us on a Saturday morning here Eastern time. Have a great evening.
My pleasure. That's my pleasure. I'll see you in a few weeks' time.
Right. Bye then.
Okay. All the best. Bye-bye.